Because all the descent really doesn't mean the same thing as COVID means. So thanks for coming and being here on short notice. We would like to welcome Brian Bond. There he is over there. He's going to be talking today clearly about entrepreneurial marketing. We've heard that he is a baller and that there's a lot of people that admire everything he does. Yes. So listen closely, carefully, and yeah, thanks for coming. I don't think we really have any announcements as far as logistically yet. Look for your email for our next couple of events. We're still coordinating with speakers that are flying in, so you'll get those dates as soon as we have them. Logistically, I think that's it, but thanks for being here. And welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks. So I'm going to get used to this, like you can only stand in a certain area and talk into this thing here for minutes. Thanks for having me. I've been in and out of the Foundry for the last few years, helping out on various projects. I love what we do here and what the purpose is. And it's fun to be able to come in and kind of talk to you about some of this stuff. So the goal tonight is to package what's normally like an entire semester's worth of activity for my entrepreneurial marketing class into 30 minutes, but also just try to give you guys a general overview. So tonight's going to be pretty high level. Really want to talk to you about just what it takes to kind of get your mindset into a marketing mindset from the beginning as you start a company. It's one of those things, marketing is kind of an afterthought for a lot of folks as they start to think about their startups. And modern marketing, especially in the lean startup model, is something that is very important. It takes a lot of effort to put in right in front of you to design the product. So we're going to run through that a little bit. I'm going to try to keep this to about half an hour, 40 minutes or so we have some Q&A time. Hopefully we'll move a little bit faster than that. So, but kind of interrupt if we're going too fast or if you disagree or anything like that. So that's kind of a precursor. And start up the screen, but hopefully everybody's be able to see everything. So again, kind of this is where I see a lot of startups, where somebody has a really cool product idea, or we got a really great tech that we built, or we're getting started and we produce it, we get some minimal viable products out there, and then we go, okay, this is cool. Why isn't anybody buying it? Where are the customers? And that's because we kind of, again, think about marketing as an afterthought. So I want to walk you through a process that kind of puts it back to the forefront as you're starting to build your companies, as you're building your startups. It's just the mindset, the framing that you have to go through to make sure you're set up for success. So I see a couple of students in the audience. I'm going to apologize a little bit. Some of this is going to be pretty repetitious from what you've heard in the past. But just real quick, why am I up here? So I've got a bit of experience in startups, about nearly 20 years of marketing and product management, venture-backed startups in B2B, B2C space, as well as the small business category. So kind of seen a lot of it and hopefully can lend some of that experience to you. I'm always surprised on a daily basis, though, but what else is coming out and what else is new. So anyway, we don't need to focus on that. So starting off, kind of want to just share like general tips, general thoughts about startup marketing and even just as an entrepreneurial marketer. And for those of you who know me, which is about half the room, I'm not very guarded with my comments. I kind of like say it like it is. So, but I am pretty open to saying these are my opinions, what I've just kind of seen out there. So I'm first to say disagree with me. I'll just share with you kind of my thoughts. And the first is I'm going to offend some people. So let's start with that. There's 2 or 3 big things that I see going on. And I'm not going to say it's now. It's been going on for the last 10 years. Trends and whatnot that I think everybody should just be careful about. Things that I don't allow to creep into my organizations. The first one is I don't allow crusaders. And what I mean by crusaders is there are thoughts out there, or there are individuals, there are realms of thought around certain things that everyone is so apprehensive to question, right? The validity of them. It's heresy to say that this is not the way it should work. And I'm the first to say that if something's going on out there, whether it's, I'll pick on two that I hear a lot, agile development and social media marketing. There are absolutely great instances for both those two schools of thought to be applied to businesses, but if somebody's sitting there holding a book in front of your business saying, this is how it's done, I'm the first to say, give me that book and tear it up. Those are good principles and philosophies that you need to apply to your situation. So as an entrepreneurial marketer or even a product guy, I mean, what's important for you to step back and go, does this work for my business? I understand what this is. Does it work for our business? So the first thing that I'd say it's really, really important as a startup marketer or anything like that is critical thinking skills. Like, it's sit back and be able to figure out if something's actually going to work for you or not. Don't do it because somebody's just saying you have to do it. So I said at the beginning to say, again, these are my opinions, and you should take them all with a grain of salt, and a little bit of thought, put them to your business as they apply. And maybe they don't always apply. So the second one is, this is going to make some grunts. There's no such thing as growth hacking. This is a stupid phrase, and here's why. Growth hacking is marketing. I think what's happened in the last few years is, in some areas, we as marketers, we've been bad stewards of our responsibilities. We've kind of gotten slack. We've started to do spray and pray marketing in a few places, and we've started to kind of take really crazy risks with what we think is going to work and put a lot of money and effort and time against something without really putting the critical thinking behind it. And when you sit back and you put the critical thinking behind what you want to do as a marketer, and the creativity goes back into it in a thoughtful way, well, suddenly you have things that resonate with your audience and it works. We just happen to be calling that growth hacking right now. I call that marketing that works. So take that really to heart and say, when you start to think about what you're trying to do as a marketer, work through some of these steps we'll talk through, because that thoughtful process, again, that critical thinking, is actually what's going to ensure your success more than just throwing out a million campaigns and hopefully one of them hits. Check work. Make sense? All right. So quickly, a little bit of history behind what we're talking about. So marketing and advertising is nothing new. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Here's a great ad from a Roman town about 2,500 years ago, advertising a match in the Colosseum. So it's not that we're suddenly discovering the golden age of marketing. It's that we suddenly have a whole lot more tools and abilities to actually do this thing correctly, be smart about it. So, as we think about, the golden age of advertising, the modern age of advertising, 50s, 60s, madman eras, right? A lot of that is just creativity running around, fueled by a little bit of booze and some cool suits. But, I kind of have to sit back and feel a little bit sorry for those guys, because they don't have the tools that we have today. They don't have the ability to understand individual psychology behind our buyers, be able to segment the way we were able to segment today, be able to have as many media outlets as we have today to connect their audience. So a lot of what they did was focused on the what. What can we do? Because they didn't have that many opportunities. So a lot of it was highly creative branding campaigns to drive general awareness. At the end of the day, there wasn't a ton of opportunity to track whether something they were doing was working. Today, though, the modern marketer is something really, really different. We can be focused on the how and the why, which is where it gets really, really exciting. So, and also a little bit of, I think, discouraging for folks that are purely in the creative element, right? The days of the creative director as running all of marketing, kind of a little bit in the past. They're an important player these days, but they don't have the broad skill set, or at least that purely creative skill set isn't what's going to actually make them successful. It's a broader skill set of skills. The first one is you got to be a critical thinker and a little bit of a scientist. We'll talk about the scientist part in a second when we talk about testing. But again, you got to be able to sit back and go, what are we doing and why? Or what are we trying to accomplish? Before you even start to just say, all right, let's pull a billboard out in 15. This is going to be great. This is the one, and my students will tell you it's the one I harp on more than anything else, is empathetic. What does empathetic mean? Wait, grab that one. Empathy. Either. Emotional. It's around emotional, but it's It's more about understanding the emotion of your audience. So being able to put yourself in the position of your customer deeply, so that you understand what their motivations are. And this is a skill. The reason I call it a skill is because there are just folks that don't have the ability to put themselves in somebody else's shoes to the extent that they need to, and that's fine. It's good, and you'll be very successful if you do. I'm saying good marketers have the ability to sit back and say, okay, this is my customer, this is the mindset they're in, this is the problems they're having, this is how I'd approach it if I were them. And be able to understand that, it's going to help you be really, really effective. So that's an important trait. The next is a full funnel thinker. You may know, guess what I mean by that? Okay, so think about the customer funnel, the life cycle, right? From the point that they get awareness around your brand, to engaging with your products, to purchasing or registering, whatever it is with your products, and sticking around afterwards and being engaged. An effective marketer has to think about all that, right? Think about how do we keep that customer around? How do we generate that life cycle? So it's generating value across their entire experience. And then don't discount the creative. We've got to be creative, and that's the fun part. We get to sit back and take some of these other skills and say, all right, how do we put them to use to develop something that's really interesting or that's really going to resonate with your audience, because that's what's going to be that hook. And then two others, this idea of Kaizen. Anybody know what that means?
Constant improvement.
Continuous improvement, continual optimization. So modern marketers, most of your job is going to be spent actually improving what you've done, right? It's going to be putting something out there, learning from it, moving on. It's just like when we develop products, the minimal viable product. Let's put something out there, let's see what the response is, and let's optimize. That's every day for modern marketing. And then lastly, you got to be curious, right? So unfortunately, entrepreneurs, we're all kind of naturally curious around this. You know, we'll go out and try to figure out the best case studies. We'll go out and try to find out what's working somewhere else, or what are cool things we can try, or what's going to work better in this situation. So being able to apply that to your marketing is critical as well. So this kind of broad skill set, you know, everybody that has that is this kind of epic marketer that can be a jack of all trades and kind of apply whatever the situation is, to sit back and apply these different skills to say, all right, how do we market this business? Cool. And then don't forget to do this. That's important. All right. So another tip: start thinking about marketing from the very, very beginning. So I'm my last 4 or 5 opportunities, I've been brought in about a year after the company starts. And it's a really hard time to be thinking about marketing for the first time for any business, because a lot of times we'll have to rip up track. And you know, we'll have product out there which will say, okay, this is what we're building, this is what we think is cool, this is what we think the market problems are, and this is how we're doing it. Even if you're working with customers and getting feedback on a continual basis, you're not necessarily in the mindset of value delivery, right? There's problem solving, and so what marketing does in a startup environment is really start to tie the features, the benefits of your product to the values that your customers have, and the values that they, or the problems they need to be solved in the context of why they have those problems. So bringing marketing in early allows you to kind of be at the front of that cycle. And you know, what it really turns into is most of marketing in a startup is problem. You know, it's identifying the connection between features, what you're trying to accomplish in the business, the problems and the values of your customer segment. So we'll walk through how that works. If you don't have that, that's when you get the, you know, let's cross our fingers and hopefully this works, and spread some marketing fairy dust on this, and hopefully we have 1,000 customers tomorrow. So then the next tip is you have to be focused on the life cycle. So this is my Bible. I have this on my desktop. I focus my organization around this. I focus my metrics around this. And this is just the segments of the funnel. It doesn't matter what type of business you're in, from a B2B enterprise software company to a content marketing play to an app, anything like that. Each of these stages is what your customers are going through in their journey to the brand, right? From awareness to actually interacting with you guys for the first time, so top of the funnel, to really understanding what it is you're doing and having some connection with the value that it could bring, so middle of the funnel to converting to engagement, to lifetime value, to the being an advocate for your product. So by focusing around these different areas of the funnel, making sure that you're thinking about, from a marketing perspective, how you're going to address everybody as they move along this journey, that's a real key to success. So, and that's where you can, again, focus your metrics as well. So that's the next one is, from the very beginning, you got to be focused on metrics. So there's the general campaign metrics of how well is your marketing doing, but then there's bigger metrics that are about how's your business doing as it relates to marketing. So here are some that are kind of critical you have to have. Customer acquisition costs, so CPA is kind of a thing of the past. Cost per acquisition, it's really customer acquisition costs, however you want to roll those in. So you got to know what it costs you to get a customer. Your RUPU, right? Average revenue per user. So of the people that are engaged, are you monetizing your base in some way? Maybe the revenue stream is an ad model. Maybe your revenue stream is a lead generation model for the business. You've got to relate some value that your business is creating back to your average user, so you know if your business is scalable. And then lifetime value. What is the average person that starts to interact with you worth over their lifetime? Hopefully that's increasing every time. If you're B2B, especially if you're enterprise, you better know time to close and your average deal sizes. And then if you're a content or subscription, you need to know engagement. How are people engaged with your solution? So these sound like kind of hard metrics to figure out right at the onset. I'd say they're business critical. When we look at how companies are being evaluated right now, especially by venture capitalists and in acquisitions, the reason some of these companies are going for way many multiples than we would possibly think they would is because they've dialed these metrics down, and they've dialed that they can actually get a customer base equitably, even if they're not generating a ton of revenue. But the fact that their unit economics are down and their measurements are down means that they've been able to generate a lot of value in just being able to acquire customers. So that's really powerful these days. You talk to most venture capitalists, like I just spent 4 months on roadshows, things like that, and you'll talk, and the customer growth and the engagement is really what people are looking for more than anything else, as long as you know the unit economics makes sense. Okay, so last thing, 2 quotes that you'll hear from me a lot: sweat the small stuff, but don't get stuck in the thick of thin things. So this is really important, guys. As an entrepreneur, as a small business, your number one constraint is resources, right? Time and money, or however else you want to count resources. But focusing on the right things at the right times is what's critical. So these are 2 that I always go back to, and that's, if you're going to do something, try to do it well. You don't have to knock it out of the park, but don't just do it because you think you should do it. Put some thought into it and some effort. And then the second is really take a step back and go, all right, am I getting stuck in the thick of the things? In other words, am I working on something really hard that in the grand scheme of things doesn't actually move the needle very much for our business, or is just a time suck? And be really stringent and say, this is where we're going to cut some corners right now, or this is where we're going to abandon this project. Happens a lot in marketing. You can put a ton of time and effort into thinking and planning and campaigns that at the end of the day, even if they're incredibly successful, are not really going to move the needle. So really think hard on a daily basis. Is this the thick and thin things, or is this really what's going to matter? All right, so those are kind of general tips. What I want to do probably for the rest of the 15 or so minutes is at a real high level walk you through kind of how I organize my thinking around going to market. We're not going to have a ton of time to go into each of these, but we'll hit a few of them in some detail. But this is, I'll preface this to say, this is going to sound like work. It's going to sound like a lot of work. And you shouldn't be intimidated, because even the stuff we're going to talk about, like about thinking about your brand, is something you should spend like an afternoon on, and that's it. And I'll show you why that's important. But what we're going to talk about here is the roadmap of going to market. So it starts, this is a terrible metaphor and even more crudely drawn, but it's like building a house, right? So we start with different steps to make sure that you are executing to your best potential. First is figure out your brand positioning. So what is it you do? We'll walk through that in a little bit more detail. The next is really figuring out your audience and how your product is positioned for those audiences. It's kind of so these are the two foundational elements that allow you to execute all of your marketing things against. The next is kind of like your objective. Why are we talking about it? What do we want them to do? It could be a lot of different reasons depending on your business model or what you're trying to get out of your customer base or potential customer base. So that's kind of the blueprint plan. And then lastly is the channels and tactics and promotions, like the execution, building of metaphoric house. How do you get things, where should we go talk to our customers, and how should we go talk to our customers? So in not metaphor form here, and just like an organization, this is kind of how I organize all of my marketing efforts. Starting with brand positioning, flowing to the product positioning, different objectives. So I might have a couple. We can talk through a couple of those examples, but it might be, hey, I need to get more registered users, or I need to get those registered users to actually sign up. Or maybe I need to get upgrades signed up back to the site because they haven't seen them, or back to the store, or downloading that piece of content because I haven't seen most of them. And then channels and tactics. What media, what methods can I use to interact with those individuals? Whether it's social media, whether it's digital, even offline, phone, whatever else. So this kind of general structure. So what I want to do is briefly walk through kind of each of these steps and give you kind of a high level of how you might approach them. And again, I just want to reiterate here, because this, again, sounds like a lot of work. And it is something, right? It's that critical thinking, but it's something you can do in an afternoon where you're thinking hard about what is it that I'm building? Why does it matter? And who cares, right? So a lot of that is questions you have to ask yourself through the process, which is why it's so valuable to do. So first, let's talk about brand strategy and positioning. So generally, it kind of follows this. Your company is about doing something for some audience because they have some problem or some value trying to generate. Really broad. But it should be specific enough that you can rattle it off in the elevator and go, hey, this is what we're about, and this is who we're talking to, and people go, oh, totally get what that kind of is. Yeah, that makes sense. But it shouldn't be so specific that it paints you into a corner. Lots of brands get challenged with this, especially if you think about pivoting, or you think about product and brand extension in the future, where I've got a great example here, where somebody has built a brand around being known to do something, but then comes out with something completely different, and they're like, what does that have to do with anything? I want to show you my favorite one at the moment. This is live on their site, by the way. So FedEx is about, what's the FedEx brand about? Shipping, right? Fast, easy, affordable shipping, right? But FedEx is also about Tech Connect, where they'll come and fix your computers. That's a brand extension that is, you sit back and go, wait. So if I'm a consumer that's interacting and go, dude, FedEx just fixed all my computers, it was great. They're like, FedEx did what? You gave them your computers? Like, that's a brand disconnect from the value they're trying to generate. Now, here's the funny thing, is that FedEx is in the middle of trying to reposition their brand. And they're doing it, personally, I think they're doing it very, very poorly, because we all think of them still as a shipper, where if you go and read their brand's positioning statement on their site, what is FedEx? It's a small business services company, right? So there's another person in the category, or there's another company in the category that's also shifting their positioning, and I think they're doing it really well. You know who that is? It's UPS. What does UPS stand for? What's their company? They're a logistics company, right? They've been actively trying to reposition themselves to be about logistics, to open themselves up for brand extension. So my advice is think a little bit more broadly now as you start your business to say, hey, what are we trying to actually do for our audience here? Are we trying to solve one specific problem or with the feature set, or are we actually trying to solve a bigger problem with our vision? It might be that it's very, very specific and you want to be really, really focused. Just realize that might tie you in so that if you ever try to extend your product line later, people are scratching their head going, why is GE, why are you selling microwaves now if you're a television company? So we have to go back and say, well, who cares? This sounds like branding stuff. You know, it's fluffy and not about actually putting money into the bank. It is that to some extent, but it's also the framework that keeps you on message. So you start to develop your marketing and put things out there. You know that you have something to communicate that people can understand what you're actually doing. That when you go talk about the products you're trying to sell to your audience, that you know what you're actually trying to communicate versus just saying, buy this feature. So that'll hopefully be a little bit more prepared. So here's my other pet peeve when it comes to people describing their companies. It's like archaic terms, acronyms, jargon. Like, don't let that stuff get into how you describe your company. Your customers are not jargony. They want to know simply what you're doing and how does it help them, right? So I have a funny post here to share. Anybody watching Silicon Valley on HBO? Is it painfully accurate? It's very, very hysterical if you want to watch it. I fringed through about half episodes because it's incredibly spot on, the parody. But they did a great parody about this TechCrunch Disrupt about this exact thing. Sorry. Speakers went to sleep.
Hello, my name is SLC-Brian. I'm the CEO of Metabug, and we're here to revolutionize the way you report bugs on your mobile platform. Happen will revolutionize the face-to-face mobile news aggregation as you know it. We're making the world a better place through passive algorithms for consensus protocols. And we're making the world a better place with software defined data centers for how to be a better place with novel data models to communicate between entities. A better place through scalable, fault-tolerant, distributed database access transactions. And we are truly local, global, social, and we're completely so low. And we're low, so bro. We're so low. But now we're low, so. No, low, so low. No, next up, executive chairman and chief visionary early.
So anyway, I think it captures, thankfully, exactly what's going on when you hear about companies describing themselves. We all say the same exact things. So stand out a little bit, reduce the jargon, talk about value benefits. So going back to kind of how we talk about product positioning and audience. So this is kind of my three-step process that I use to figure out product positioning and audience alignment, and that's sit back, figure out who your audience is and what they really want. Hopefully you've done this as part of your product evolution in the very beginning of your company, or as you're doing this. You're sitting back and you're trying to design your product. I hope you're using the MVP model where you're actually going out and talking to customers and understanding their needs. So this should be pretty easy. Right? You sit back and go, who are all the different types of individuals who can use our service products, like whatever it is, and why do they care, right? What's in it for them? And then here's where I see 90% of the disconnect happen. We go off and we go, okay, we know exactly what they want and why they want it. Now let's start regurgitating features. All right, it does this, it does this, it does this, it does this, has detachable sunroof and whatever else, right? That's the problem. We stop there, right? The next step is say, all right, great. Why does that matter to this audience? Why do they care about this? Why do they care about this? Why do they care about this? That's what we call feature benefit language, right? It's the benefits of the features you're actually creating. That's what people want to hear about. What can this thing do for me? How can this solve my problem? How can this create an opportunity? So instead of saying it does this, say it allows you to do this. It allows you to solve this problem. It allows you to create this benefit. So, and that's the last step. It's like relate it back to a way that actually, to the features, you relate those benefits back to the features, and that reinforces your brand. So if we say, hey, our brand is about connecting people so that they can more easily share restaurant locations. So great. If the tap while you're in the restaurant feature. That's a great feature. You can talk about it that way, or you can say, easily share where you're at with your friends. So they know where the best feeds are. Describing it in value benefit language. So, who would use your product? And this is super high level. I know, just breezing through this, and I can certainly sit down with anybody after the fact, or I can come back and talk each of these steps a little bit more detail. But trying to figure out again who's going to use your product, and who do they look like from a demographic standpoint, but then also from a psychographic standpoint. Right? So the idea of saying, we're all the same in the room because we all have the same demographics is totally wrong. Right? People react to situations differently. People have different psychological motivations and needs. So thinking about who's going to be using this product and how to talk to them is critical when you're defining your audience. So sitting back, looking at the problem statement, looking at your feature benefits now, saying who are the different audiences, categorize them that this could appeal to. That's kind of the first step there. And then if this is really challenging, and I've done this for most of our businesses that I've been involved in, build some personas. Anybody know what a persona is? Exactly. So it's a made-up individual, but a really detailed made-up individual that represents a group of your clients or your audience. So here's an example, and you don't have to go through this much detail like we did, but here's an example of one of our 7 personas that matched somebody we're trying to talk to in this case. Mary, she's a florist. Here are her specific issues. She doesn't have a lot of credit history. She's a bit. She has these concerns. Here's how we can best talk to Mary. Well, it just happens to be there's 2 million Marys out there. So if we're building marketing that talks to Mary, we're going to be building marketing that talks to 2 million people. So this representation of an audience is in a physical form allows your product team, allows your marketing team, yourself, if you're wearing both hats, to think really tangibly. Because now my team, or as we think about our marketing, we can sit back and go, what would Mary want? How do we talk to Mary? And it just makes it a little bit more easy and tangible to build out these benefits. Yeah. Yeah.
Probably talk to others just on this, but I'm sure you guys probably have some say, I mean, Mary would do this, you actually go out and try and talk to Mary's.
Absolutely.
Are we understanding very well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key areas here are motivation, goals, frustration, pain points, common questions, influences, then go talk to your customers. Okay, let's talk through each of those things. If you're getting a list of those motivations, fears, or like that, and you take it back and go, okay, we just heard this from an actual customer. Do they match one of our personas? They do, great, personas are right. Or, no, we have nobody that sounds anything remotely like the feedback we just got. These are totally wrong, let's adjust them. And so that iterative process helps you zone in a little bit on what really matters. So, and what's key about personas like this, or even just defining your audience, is also their buying mentality, right? It's the psychological aspect too. In this case, we say Mary is thoughtful and humanistic, meaning she is going to look at all the details. She's going to want to hear about why this is the best solution. She's going to do some homework before she takes any action, but she's humanistic. So the type of homework she wants to do is probably like testimonials. She wants to know other real people are using this, right? So by adding that psychological spin to it, the psychographic spin to it, we can start to really hone in our messaging on stuff that we know is going to react well. And this is stuff that you're doing already on the product side, right? Why are we throwing this feature in there? Well, because we think people like this are going to really use it in this way. Let's throw it in there. Let's put it out and see if that's actually what happens. You can do the exact same thing with marketing. So we talked about discovering your feature benefits. What can your product do, and what's unique about it? What are the unique features and things like that? Because those will be things you really want to talk about. Hopefully have a high level of resonance with your audience. And lastly, mapping. So you have all those product features, you know who you're talking to, you know how they want to hear about it. Now let's talk about it in value benefit language and map the two together. So then what you have is you have some general messaging guidelines. This, again, sounds like a whole lot of work, but really what we're just saying is, how do we talk to our customers about the stuff we just built in a way that they care? So this doesn't have to be super, super detailed. It can be pretty high level, but it's important that we understand this so that we can get the right messaging out there so that people that you would hope to be interested in your product, which you made all these assumptions, are actually interested in your product. I always kind of throw this into this. I like to be this ballsy about it. Do the F cares? AF doesn't matter. I say it like that, and we say it around the office like that because it forces us to get a little defensive and get a little bit on our toes about it. Like, yeah, why does this feature matter to this person? Or find this person like, great, that was awesome. Who the hell cares? Why would I want this? And somebody has to go, well, because you want to do this and this. Okay, there, you're driving to benefits. You're driving to what really matters. If you sit back and develop a feature or a campaign or something like that, and somebody walks up in my office and goes, well, you have to try to care about that. You can't sit back and go, right, well, you have to care. Into the recycling bin, right? Start up. So it's a way to get a little bit brash about making sure that these are really lining up and motivating. So if you can't defend it with some gusto, maybe they're not exactly the real benefits, feature benefits. So that's all I'm going to say about audience and product positioning. We can go like 2 or 3 hours on that. It's better depth. We're running a little low on time, so we won't give a big example. Let me tell you a quick story that I totally stole from Rory Sutherland, who's the creative director of Ogilvy. There's a TED Talk you can watch. Lots of really great detail. So I'm just going to retell it because it's a great example of creative positioning. So Frederick the Great, 1600s, Germany, recognized a problem with the German food supply that was really heavily grain-based. And he thought, man, this is a really, really big risk for our country. If there's ever a problem with grain supply, we're all going to starve. So we need to get some more diversity in our food. So he said, there's this thing I've heard about, it's called potato. I think it's pretty good, it's pretty cool. Let's get everyone started with potatoes. Germans, Prussians, at one point in Germany, Prussians looked at it and went, the hell is this? This is this ugly thing growing in the ground. We're not going to touch this thing. It would not take it all. So he said, okay, well, this is a positioning problem. So we're going to reposition this as a premium product now. Back to all you peasants, you can't eat potatoes. Sorry, that's royalty only. And so they're off limits. We're only going to eat potatoes. We're going to plant them in our gardens. So we planted all these potatoes in the nobles' gardens, and as Rory says, guarded them poorly. Suddenly, what did every peasant or every person in Prussia want? The thing they couldn't have, right? The prestigious product. So they started stealing it. Within a generation, it became a mainstay of the German food diet. So that's his grave on the side. People to this day are leaving potatoes all over because they recognize the contribution. But that was a repositioning of a product, right, to a premium position. That said, the value benefit here is clearly that you need it as a food staple, but we're going to position it as something that's premium that you can have to drive desire. Lots of others brands have that kind of similar positioning. Maybe name a couple or a couple examples.
White rice. White rice went through a similar process.
In Japan, right? You're talking about the import issues? Yeah. So that's exactly the same thing. It's illegal to import white rice into Japan. Suddenly it's the biggest growing commodity underground planet. Another one is, a lot of you too young to remember this, but Gmail, when it came out, nobody could get a Gmail account. You had to actually get a passcode from somebody. You only could get 5. It was this huge phenomenon. Who could have a Google address? Who could have a Google email account? Huge example of it. I'll talk about another one with pricing here. So I'm not going to spend hardly any time on pricing because I know you guys are going to spend a ton of time in 2 weeks or whatever it is on pricing. Just to say, I'm a big fan of not doing a lot of pricing modeling and trying to figure out demand curves and trying to figure out price elasticity. Just go ahead and test it. Price is directly proportional to the value you can drive with your products, either perceived value or actual value. Hopefully it's actual value, reinforced with perceived value. So if you want to go out with a premium position, you should. I don't have a problem that it probably costs Google 1/1000th of a cent to make that $4 click I just paid for happen. I don't have a problem with that. Like, I don't sit back and go, holy crap, they're making a ton of money off me. I go, hey, they're making a ton of money because they're actually providing a service that works for me. So far, that's efficient. I'm okay with that. If they want to go spend that money on wind farms and wherever, fine. But where that value exchange exists, that's where your pricing can sit. I get really, really frustrated. This happens at enterprise sales a lot, where somebody goes, well, here's our cost structure, so we have to mark it up like this to the customer. It's like, I don't care that they know what our cost structure is or how much markup it is. That's none of their damn business. What they should care about is what I want to charge, is that is worth the value of the service. Can they equate what they're going to get for what we're going to charge? So never talk COGS or anything like that to, especially like on the enterprise side. Like your labor models or things like that, that's none of your customer's business. If they can't justify the price that you're asking for, then you're valued. So rank off. If you have to discount heavily, you price it wrong. You are not driving the correct value. Read ski industry there. So one other quick example, and we'll move right along. So Louis Vuitton. This is an extreme example of maintaining value. Louis Vuitton, in their, whatever it is, 40-year modern history, has never once discounted it back. If you ever see a Louis Vuitton discounted, it's either resold to somebody, they're probably going to get spanked over it, or it's fake. So what happens at the end of the year with all their extra inventory? Do you know? Torched, burnt. That's where every woman in the audience goes, ah! Seriously, they destroy all their extra inventory every year. Why do they do that? So they can maintain the premium position. So they can say, this is a $1,400 bag, and it will always be a $1,400 bag until we raise prices on it. So that's their premium, they're exclusive, they drive obsolescence. So really good example of saying, we can justify our price by the value we're delivering. Value in this case is prestige. So back to the simplified plan. Two more things real quick. I know we're a little bit long here. Objectives. So what are we trying to do? I go back to the funnel. At any point in time, your marketing should relate to something on this board, right? You're either generating awareness about your company, your brand, your product, trying to convince somebody to not just be aware, but actually take action to interact with your brand, trying to convince them to take an action to purchase, to register, to walk in, to whatever your business model is, to read a piece of content, to look at a piece of advertising, whatever it is. So your objectives of your campaigns need to relate to whatever it is on this funnel. And it can be different things for different times. Maybe right now, you've got all the customers interested. You've got as many people interested in the brand as you want right now. You have a problem with getting people to actually purchase. So we're going to focus on marketing effort, people we know about, getting them to purchase. Or maybe say, we've got everybody on the site once. You can't get it back. We're a content play, and we want them to come back and read articles or blog or whatever else it needs to be. How do we get them back? Okay, that's your campaign objective, or that's your objective. So then you go back and you say, all right, we know we're talking to this person, these type of individuals, about our product in this way. Here's the value benefits, and our objective is to get them back to the site, or get them to walk in again after they've already had that first cup of coffee. How can we go talk to them? Where are we going to go interact with this? And that's where channels are tactics. So we could spend days upon days upon days talking about all the different ways that we can market to individuals. You guys see best practice all the time. I know you guys communicate about what's working, whether that's through social media, whether it's digital, offline, phone, whatever it is. Those are the channel tactics. They have to relate to the audience you're talking to, right? So that's why it's so important to sit back on the front end and go, who are we talking to, and how are we going to talk to them? Because now we're getting to the point of, all right, where do they spend their time? What's the media that's actually going to get in front of them that they can actually interact with? Maybe that's something from a friend. Maybe that's something that you put out on the social media network. Maybe that's something that you're sending out because you have their email address because they first told you about that they're interested in your product or service. So map those objectives, map those tactics to your audience, what you're trying to do. That makes sense? So here's a quick example. So let's say our objective is we've got a whole bunch of people that started our registration process, we need to get them finished. Bailed out of the site. Well, that's the objective. Challenge and tactics might be an internal email. We have their email address because they gave us that in the process before they bailed. So now we can go back and remarket to them through email. We also could use like some simple Google tools and do retargeting advertising through email or as they're browsing around the sites. So that's an example where, because we're talking about that objective and what we're trying to get them to do in the audience, we can go pick tactics and media that's going to actually resonate. Make sense? All right. Last example here. So I picked Washio because they just raised, I think, $10.5 million yesterday with dry cleaning. So they have dry cleaning to your services. It's all app-based. Those they bring it back to you. So this is actually their brand statement. I think it's a little weak because it doesn't totally talk to value benefits, but offers premium dry cleaning and laundry service delivered to your door. And then I kind of came up with this audience and product positioning, text adding or singles, looking for the best way to clean the laundry, the hassle of actually going to the cleaner. That's value benefit. All right, so then our objectives could be we need new registrations, we need to convert existing registrations, and fuel lines. All right, so just thinking randomly about where can we get a hold of these folks. Oops. Now, let's say we want to do a campaign through Facebook. These folks are on it all the time. They're tech savvy, they're urban. Sponsored posts, display ads. We can do a refer friend program. There's lots of different things we can try. Tactics. It's a mobile service. We do display ads. So maybe mobile channel is the way to use. We are cash strapped, so let's go after PR play good. Let's get some media excited about it. Let's do an event out in the corner of Union Square in San Francisco about clean laundry or whatever it is. A smeller reporter campaign, something like that. Right? So you then use this framework to start to figure out why you're actually doing the things you're going to do, and focus your efforts and your resources on the things that you think are going to matter to your objectives. So this organizational structure I find works really, really well. From the point you're a one-person company to the point you're a very big company. So that's kind of my tip here. We can talk about campaign promotion testing, but that would be way too long for tonight. So at some point we want to go through that in some detail. We certainly can. Other than to say really quickly, testing in modern marketing is about the scientific method. That's why you're all scientists as well. Start off with the problem you're trying to solve, an objective, have a hypothesis about what do you think is going to happen. Hey, if we put the red button over here, I think we're going to get more registrants. Okay, plan out that test. Let's analyze the results. And just like lean startup model with your product, do the same exact things with your marketing. Rinse, repeat. Try it again. Try it in a different place. Do A/B testing. So a couple other closing thoughts real quick. I know this is a real high level, but kind of two quotes in my interpretation. So again, these are kind of more guidelines, right? This is what I've seen work. This is what I use. Hopefully it's a structure that you can put into place that'll offer you a little bit more a framework to do critical thinking about your business. If it doesn't apply or if there's something that doesn't make sense, change it. Like, there's no Bible. Like, figure out what's going to work for your business. Use these as guidelines. Second is, and you hear this every week, I'm sure, and you hear this throughout, like, fail faster, fail often. Just learn, right? Fail in a way that you learn and can repeat what you think is going to work the next time without actually repeating the mistake. And so that's kind of my version here in yellow, which says, set yourself up for success. Do the work up front, and this is my best foot forward on this. And that way, if there's failure, embrace it, because it's the best effort to it. Maybe your hypothesis is wrong or something else. You can embrace the failure, learn from it, and try it again. So just this continual opportunity to improve. Again, I like what Woody Allen says, if you're not failing every once in a while, you're not really doing anything really innovative. So that's kind of my closing message is saying, with entrepreneurial marketing, it's a lot about just thinking through on the front end why we're doing something, asking yourself why constantly, and then executing, trying. So finding the best thing that's best. So that's kind of what I prepared tonight. I hope that helped out at all or interesting. So thanks. Any questions about anything related to this or not? Yeah.
What was the name of that TED Talk?
Oh, Roy Sutherland's. I actually don't know the name of the talk, but it's Roy Sutherland. It's very, very, very funny. Very clever. He had this great analogy. It says, marketers think about problems very, very differently than engineers. So there's this shuttle, the shuttle ride. The UK government spent like $2 billion or pounds trying to make it 30 minutes faster. And they said, well, marketers look at this and go, if for $2 billion we could have hired every supermodel in the country to walk around with champagne, it wouldn't matter if the ride was 3 hours longer. So it's just positioning a different thing. Anyway, great talk. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
So I've heard you mention the contact.
Yeah.
That would be part of tactics. How would you do that?
Yeah, so what I do is, and I can pull up mine, but I go back to this map here, and I say, all right, at what points do we want to talk to these individuals about what objective? And then I layer on here the tactic. Right, so if it's, all right, we're getting people through the registration process, which is like the very last part of that, right before they convert. Just using an on-site example. But think about, like if you're a restaurateur, then walking through the door, looking at the menu. What gets them to the counter excited about ordering as much as possible? So take this example wherever you want. But looking at, like, let's say, a registration process, I go, okay, there's a couple of different things I can do at this point in their life cycle. I can communicate with them on site. I can communicate with them through email. I can communicate with them online elsewhere if they bail out. And so what I've done there is started to look at the customer map and layered on channels and tactics that address that point in the funnel. So that's kind of how I organize. So. Maybe, and this is why this helps, because you think about how you can slice and dice. It might be the case that you want to talk to everybody, and then this is a really helpful way to go. Well, we don't want to over-communicate, right? If we have too many campaigns running at this exact same point in their life cycle, we can totally bombard them. I think everybody in the room's had that happen, probably with one service or another. Alternatively, you could look at it in segments. Say, okay, great, we're going to have 2 different customer types here going through the same process. We're going to talk to this group like this, and this group like this. So that's the 2 ways you can look at it. Good question. That it? Okay, thank you.
So really quick, I just wanted to thank Brian for coming. And just say